Hello everybody, Mr. E here. So this is the run-through tutorial for the CM teachers for the year 7 and 8 workshop. This is the evolution of the musical video game. The key change from the previous years is that now we are starting from a template with quite a lot of code happening in the background, and we're focusing on certain areas with the students. The reason for doing this is so that there is more space to work on the music and a bit less fiddly in terms of coding. So we kind of have rebalanced the workload. The other possibility, the expansion possibility, in case you finish this workshop, this tutorial quickly, is to go and create the assets and work a little bit on the pixel art towards the end of the workshop. Now, the scheme is usually, the experience is usually a 2-hour long thing. Again, this is dedicated to year 7 and 8, but as you know, in the past we may have used it in year 6, even in year 5. This is obviously a new workshop, so we need to experiment if that works or not. Obviously, we might want to dilute it a little bit. Probably my suggestion is, if it's a good year 6, no problem, go for it. If instead it's a bit of a noisy and attention span lacking year 5, perhaps maybe revert to the old workshop where we start by creating everything from scratch. We have less of the music theory happening in the background, but at least we know we can get somewhere. Now, the introduction is exactly the same as the previous one. So if you'd like a repetition of how to explain STEAM, first part, how to explain engineering, possibly the flying cow, or the 40,000 years of art in a 4-minute and the VR, please check the year 3 and 4 CPD video, and that will have the full explanation where I go in depth on that. However, for today, I'm going to delve directly into the explanation of the game, and I'm going to follow this, which is currently the lesson plan. This is the internal lesson plan just for the CM teachers. Yui is going to design the external one, which will be in the conductingmusic.uk/MBI, which, remember, is your link to start from on every given day. That's always important to be there. Now, the mechanics of the final game, just so you know what we are aiming at. First of all, as soon as the game is launched, you can make a sound only by doing one thing, by walking around. There's a root note selected in the background, and this is selected between 1 and 4 seconds. This is simply because there is a drum loop generator that creates a bar and repeats it 4 times. So depending on where you are within this 4-bar loop, you may be 1 second away from the new selection, or you may be 4 seconds away. That doesn't really matter, but it's just to explain that there might be a little gap of up to 4 seconds between a action and its subsequent sound, because it's basically a song that gets generated all the time. Anyways, as you walk around, remember that there is a route selected, and this is quite random. It will make more sense later on. There's a route selected, and the code is creating a 3rd and a 5th on top of this. And basically your character, every time you touch a button, is going to play either the root, the 3rd, or the 5th of the given chord. So we're going to have major and minor chords played at all time. Then the first interaction that you'll see is that as you pick up items, there's 3 types of items: drums, bass, and chords. You will see the status bars filling up. If the bars are filled up, they fill up in red currently, then the loop is triggered and you will hear the music. But every second, 5 points are deducted. So if the status bar runs out, the corresponding track also stops. So if you have drum point and core point but no bass, well, you're not going to hear the bass, but you're going to hear the other two. Regardless, the generative engine still works in the background, it's just not played, so don't worry about that, it's not going to crash, touch wood. Basically the idea is as you play, you need to have all of the 3 health bars quite up and running, and just keep collecting item. And if you keep collecting item, as you collect one item, you'll hear a little sound effect, and in the meantime you will hear the song being generated. So I'm going to go through the steps, and everything is written, but I thought a video could be useful, especially because, you know, code can be a bit fiddly, and hopefully we will not find any bugs. And please do send any feedback you've got, any things that the kids might find too easy or too difficult, and then we'll adjust it, because as I mentioned, this is a brand new workshop. So this is how the code starts. There's the little character here, can move around. At the moment there's no sound because we need to code it, but there is sound in terms of collection. Here you go. Okay, and you can see that the D, which is my drum, is now depleting, but every time I collect a drum is a bit more, okay? Now what we're trying to do first is to create our melodic system as we as we walk around the level. So the first 2 blocks that we're going to focus on, and I'm hoping to keep the same formatting, so you guys need to focus only on the top part, yeah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 scripts and functions, and then you can pretty much disregard this, at least for now. Let's see how we get on. First things to explain is what a C major scale is. You can talk about the diatonic scale. You can dumb it down just by saying, you know, it's all the white keys in the piano, and then also explain from the coding perspective what is an array. Array is a list, and to make the kids understand, usually we explain it as a chest of drawers with many, many, many drawers. The important thing is that every time you open a drawer, you may find a different item. There could be numbers, there could be pictures, there could be avatars, there could be sprites, there could be anything. In this case, there are notes. And remember that notes are represented as frequencies. So when I click on middle C, I'm going to have 262, which is my hertz frequency. So when you pluck a string from a guitar, for example, at middle C, that string, at least theoretically, we know that it's not exactly true because of the series of harmonics, but this is too advanced acoustics. That string will resonate 262 times a second, and that's what we call a hertz. So here we need to fill up the C major scale. Okay, you've noticed that we are not using the pentatonic anymore, and this is because in the national curriculum for year 7, the kids are requested to improvise on a drum loop, or a series of chords based on C major or A minor. So we've opted for C major. Obviously, if you finish the entire workshop and you want to change the key, it's quite cool. You can just change the name, rename the variable, say D minor, and then replace the notes. I'm sure you've noticed that the scale ends on a high D instead of on the high C or even on the B. And the reason for this is that by adding the high D, we're able to create the dominant triad, because we also have a chord generator built into this workshop. When I say dominant triad, means G, and so G, B, D. And you know, if we stopped on a C, I could not have the high D, which instead we're going to use. Okay, now please imagine at this moment in time, in the background, the engine is choosing a root note in between 1 and 4 seconds. This is randomized, so we have an always generative bass line. What is important is if we were to just do a play tone and get a random note out of these 9 notes, we will have a problem because some of those notes will clash with the chords. And then once we have bass, chords, and harmony all together, and we play in the, let's call it the wrong note, it's not going to sound as nice. So the engine at the moment is checking what the root note is, and then building a chord on top of this. So if you look at this block here, I have left it as it is. So in this second part, all you need to do is fill up the note and change this 1 to 2. So let me explain how this works. The playtone is the regular playtone block, which plays a note for half a beat, or in other words, a quaver. Now, it's looking into the C major array, which is the one that you have just recreated with the kids. And it's picking one of these. Which one? And that's the important question. First, it's looking at the root note. The root note is going to be a random note between 0 and 5, 0 being C, sorry, 0 and 4, 0 being C, 1 being D, 2 being E, 3 F, 4 is G. And then you can have plus a random value from note. Note is this array here. So what do we need to put inside this array? Well, we need to put 0. So you see I've pressed the plus sign here, and now I've got an empty thing. I cannot write directly. I need to tell the computer, look, I want numbers inside. So I'm going to go to maths, grab my 0, place it in. Then I'm going to get another number, and here I'm going to put 2. So what is 2? Basically, remember when you create a chord, you want every other note. So if you do that in terms of numbers, and you start counting from 0, 0 is your C note. So you don't want D because it's the next note. You want the every other note. So you want E, which is going to be number 2. So you can see it here. Look, 0 is here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the triad is C, E, G. However, our character is not going to play the entire triad. It's just going to play one of the 3 notes at random from the triad. Let me give you another example. If the root is D and you apply 0 to 4, D is 0, so 2 is going to be F, and 4 is going to be A, right? Where E and G instead are your 1 and 3. You can repeat the process. Let's go to F, for example. If F is 0, 1, 2 is A, 3, 4 is high C. So you see that this is basically an array, very simple mathematical list of notes that give us the major and minor triads. Once you have this, then you can launch the game and obviously give the kids some time to play. And as you move around, what we're expecting is a different note all the time. Okay, so as you play around, you will hear the various notes being played. Okay, and the chord is changing in the background. Now, something that is not immediately obvious now is that these notes are a bit too low because they're going to clash with the chords that we're going to create later. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move this one, this number 1 to number 2. So it's going to be doubling the frequency. In other words, we're going to go 1 octave above. And here is the final result. Okay, perfect. Now, the next step, obviously give the children a few minutes to play around. The next step is to create the drum loop. The drum loop needs to happen when you collect the drums. So at this stage, there is a sound effect pre-made, you can hear it. But there is currently no drum loop being triggered. We need to code that. So this is the second activity in the workshop. I'm giving for granted that now the codes of the children have got the C major scale done and this script done. Now, the next 2 things that we're focusing on are the functions drum kit and the functions groove maker. So first of all, we need to set up the drum set. So please give a brief explanation, maybe pull up a picture of what the drum kit is, what are the key parts, what are they called, how are they used. Maybe some of the students are drummers so they can share some of their knowledge. What we're going to do now is these, as you can see, they are flat waves, so silence. And what we need to do is grow inside, and it's really important that we lay them down in the correct order, especially the first three: kick, hats, and snare. So click on the image, click on gallery, go and grab the kick drum. You see the duration here? Every duration needs to be 250 milliseconds, no exceptions. That would be a semi-quaver. It's really important. So kick, hats at 250. Make sure you check 250, otherwise the loop is gonna be wonky basically. Snare is next, 250 again. Okay. Then we put tom-tom, again 250. Then there is a bonus one, which you can either just grab one, or you can generate a similar sound. This is cool. Or you can ask the children to do something, but it's really important that again it's 250. And then finally check that the silence, the last one, is also at 250. Perfect. Now this has basically created a drum setup for us, and that's basically up and running. It's in front of us, in front of the computer, but nothing is being played. So what needs to happen? You see this function here that says groove? It needs to be filled with how many notes? 4. Why 4? Because we want every 4 seconds a new 4/4 bar to be generated. How do we do that? Well, we need to pick some of these notes and then send them in. So first things first, let's create the first beat. You see it's empty. Inside here, we need to create a random value between maximum 0 and 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So I'm going to go to math, and I go to pick random, and I'm going to go from 0 to 5. Okay? I'm going to continue. Do it again, 0 to 5, again, 0 to 5, and again, 0 to 5. Okay? Now what this is doing, this loop here, currently, when it's being called by the main game loop, which is this one here in case you're curious, but you don't need to open it with the kids, don't worry about it. This one is basically selecting one of these 6 sounds. Remember to explain that 0 is a thing, that's why we go from 0 to 5 and there is no 6, even though there are 6 sounds. 0 is a thing, 0 is a slot, 0 is the first slot. But there's a problem. If we pick random notes all the time, we may end up with a silence at the beginning, we may end up with a tom-tom at the beginning, which is not really very drum-like, let's say. So to stick to the basic rules, we're going to change these randomizers. Now, please explain to the students that the kick and the snare tend to be on beat 1 and 3. Yes, it's not always the case, but for the most common loops, yes it is, especially if they are generative and change all the time. So we're going to select 0 to 2. Why 0 to 2? Because 0 is the kick, 1 is the hats, 2 is the snare. So it's give us kick, hats, snare here, and on beat 3 we also need this. So if you imagine this being a 4/4 bar, a bar of 4/4, this is the first crotchet, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth crotchet. So now we have 0 to 2 and 0 to 2. And just to be balancing this loop so we don't have 4 kicks all the time, we're going to put a 3 to 5 and a 3 to 5 on beat 2 and on beat 4. Now, when we go and play the game, we'll hear both our character playing, and if we have any energy in the D or drum HP status bar, then we'll hear the drum also generated. Here we go. So you see that you heard that it started slightly later from the collection because of that 4-second synchronization. And now we have 4 loops going on. So, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, next. Now it's run out, so the loop has stopped. So I'm going to collect more drums. Three, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see it's creating a series of 4 bar loops. Okay? And this is the second activity, give time to the students to do this. The next part is about the bass. So here's how the bass works. Every time the function is called, and this is happening again once every 4 seconds, it's selecting a root note. And this root note, actually, no, it's not every 4 seconds, it's a bit more often, this one. Let me just double check. Bass generator, no, it is, yes, it's once every second, because it's repeated 4 times within that 4 seconds loop. And also it's a bit of a lie, it's not exactly every second, but that's not important. Let's say it's more than once every 4 seconds. What does the root do? It's selecting a random node from 0 to 4. So which one is this? It's from 0, 1, sorry, not this one, here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could have potentially a C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major chords. So these are the 5 possibilities of our chord progression. This one is not yet selecting the chords, it is mostly looking at the bass. So we need to go into to play the bass. And by the way, so this is selecting the root note, which is then basically giving us the harmony for the whole game. And this bass HP, just in case you're curious, is saying if it's greater than 0, so if you've got hit points inside your status bar, then this script is going to be triggered. If not, it's going to be silent. And that's what we want to do. Basically, we need to collect the bass to be able to hear the bass. So head on over to music and get your usual play tone. And we go into the arrays to be able to read a scale. So grab it, list get value at. The list is, in this case, is a C major scale. And the value at should be on root. And root you can find under variables. There we go. So it's basically saying every time this is triggered, I'm going to go and check C major. I'm going to pick a note. Which note? Well, it could be 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Or in musical notes, C, D, E, F, or G. Now there is one last thing to do, because this is a bass. We need to go the octave below. Remember to explain to the kids that this is about hertz or frequencies, and we need to divide the frequency by 2 so that we go the octave below. Go and grab your 0 equals 0. Drop the orange block inside the first 0. Divide by 2 to go 1 octave below. You can also divide by 4 to go 2 octaves below. But it might be too low for the speakers of the tablets or the laptops. So unless they have headphones, they should not do that. And this is done. One thing before you try it, explain to the children that the bass is synchronized with the kick and the snare. Once again, the bass is synchronized with the kick and the snare. This is something that I'll show for you, the teacher only, not for the students. Okay, so this is happening. You see, every 4 seconds, it's triggering that line. Okay, so it's basically preparing the bass line, and this is the groove. The groove, remember, we set it up earlier on. This is the groove, right? So what you've done here is going to go into that array down here. And this is basically reading, this block green here is reading the array. Once again, guys, this is just for the TCM teachers, or if you have very curious students that want to know more. Okay. Now the drums are played if the drums are above 0. So here we go, it's happening, right? However, the bass is played only when the only triggered when these two are true. So when the value equals 0, meaning is a kick, or the value equal to, meaning is the snare. Long story short, what does this mean? That we play the note if and only if the bass is synchronized with a kick or a snare. If there is no kick and no snare in the drum loop, then there is no bass. So let's see if it's true. Only movement. Now I'm going to pick up the drums, so I'll start the drum loop. And now you'll hear a little arpeggio when I pick up the bass. Right guys, I found a little bug that luckily is very simple and I have fixed it now, but in the code that I showed you a moment ago, the bass generator was triggered outside here, which means that we were playing one note every beginning of the bar, but that's not what we want. It needs to be inside here, so that makes much more sense. Apologies for that. It's basically being triggered when the groove has a 0 inside itself, so a kick drum, or a 2, which is a snare drum. So now the bass is playing alongside the kick and the snare. And since I'm here, you'll see that if it's a snare between the two, right? Because kick and snare here. But I wanted to make the chords to play only when the snare is played. So that's why there's a 2 here and a 2 here. This is just an aesthetic choice, but it's so that it's a bit less repetitive. So if there are 2 kicks and a snare, you're going to hear 3 times the bass, but only once the chord. So the bass sometimes plays by itself, which is quite cool. Same strategy here. When the chords are, this is the HP value, when they are above 0, you can hear the harmonizer, which is the chords, and that I'll explain in a moment. Remember that obviously you need to pick up drums, bass and snare, and chords, and keep the levels up, otherwise the music stops. Okay, so I hope this makes sense, but keep in mind that the stuff happening inside here, you can pretty much ignore it. I'd rather you didn't ignore it, but I'm just going to say you don't need to explain it to the kids as long as it works. As long as this stuff here is done properly, everything else works. So we have done the bass, and now we want to go and do the chords, which is the very last thing. So to do the chords, we need the last 3 notes, and here are the notes. Here are the instructions. Go to music, get your play middle C, play tone middle C, and I'm going to go to a quarter, so that will be a semi-quaver. I want them to be a bit more like funk chords, you know, that we call it strappato, like cha, 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 sort of thing. And in here, we're going to play the root note. So we go to arrays, go to list, get value at, change this to C major, and we get it at root note, okay? Once again, root note. Here, we need to duplicate this, so right click and duplicate. Remember, if you are on a smart board, all you need to do is click on the play and then hold your finger there for a couple of seconds. If the children are doing it, the right click might be on the right hand side of their trackpad, or it might be a 2-finger tap on the trackpad, or it could be an Alt plus click. That depends on the computer, so make sure that you check this before you start the workshop so there's no confusion. Also, do not give for granted that the students know how to do this. They generally don't. Let's go to math and get our plus sign. Why are we doing this? Because we're going to play the root note. Okay, so the root note, remember, is a random note selected from 0 to 4. What does it mean? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it could be C, D, E, F, G. But remember when we were playing the melody, here we were playing root plus a random note within the chord, that being the 4th, or actually the root note, the 3rd, and the 5th. This time, we don't want to play one of these 3 at random. We want to play all 3 of them together, and also not at the octave above, but on the central octave, middle octave. So I'm going to get the root, place it in here, and do a +2. Go back. Here we go. Okay, so this is, let's pretend that it's on a C. The root is currently a C. This is playing C, and this is playing an E, because it's C, D, E. And now I'm going to make another copy and change this to +4, and that's going to give me C, E, G. Okay, so this is the 3rd of the chord, and this is the 5th of the chord. Again, if the root is a D, then we're going to have D, F, A. So let's try the whole game together. And remember that the goal is to keep all of the things running at the same time with all the HPs on. So we have the entire song where we have these three, well, actually 4 sound sources. Let's do it. Bass is coming in. Hear the chords. It's cute, isn't it? And now it's all finished. That's it. Perfect. So let's see if we can summarize this, because this is nice for the plenary, and then we're done with this workshop. So first of all, we need to set up our scale. So remember to explain the scale. And then what this is doing is checking which root node has been selected by the loop, which is currently obscure in the background. We'll explain this later. And it's either playing the root itself when you have root plus 0. So if the root is E and I do E plus 0, I'm staying on E. Or I'm playing one of the notes of the triad. What's a triad? It's a chord where you play every other note. So E, F, G, B. So E, G, B. And you skip F and A. So that's why we have 0. We don't have 1, which would be F in this case. We have 2, which is G. We don't have 3, which would be A, but we have 4, which is B. So this is it. It's playing either E or G or B, obviously assuming that the root note is E, and then multiplies the frequency by 2. Explain the concept of a frequency. You can also check it here. So 330 is going to be 660. 392 is 784, yeah, and then for B 494, oh my goodness, is 914. No, sorry, 982. 6 and 6, 12, 88. Sorry, 988. So this is the first part. Then we set up the drum kit, okay, by choosing the sounds. Remember, it's important to follow which sounds. And sorry, I forgot to mention, these ones are triggered every time you move the character, okay? The drums are set up. It's important to follow the order: kick, hat, snare, followed by tom, a random one, and a silence. And then we create this little bar, which is generated once every 4 seconds by selecting these random things. On beat 1 and 3, we are talking about kick or snare or hats. That's just an aesthetic choice, but to be honest, most of the grooves have the kick or the snare on 1 and 3. And then instead of 2 and 4, we have the other sounds, which are the tom, the random sound, and the generator. The silence. That's why it's 3, 4, 5. Remember, every time you place a sound, including the silence, they need to be 250 milliseconds long. Here you can explain the concept of a millisecond, bridge it with a millimeter. They will know about that, or a milliliter, and then 1,000 seconds is 1 second, and then they can do the maths. But do not give it for granted, okay? Now the drums are playing, and to keep them playing, we need to collect the drums. And then you can move to the second part here, which is the bass generator. This is the one that selects the root from 0 to 4. That means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so C, D, E, F, or G. And then provided that the bass HP, so the status bar, is not a 0, meaning that it's greater than 0, then we can trigger this script, which is a note. And this says play tone. Which tone do you play? We're going to go to C major and check which root note has been selected. Remember, it's a note between C and G, but because this is the bass, we divide its frequency by 2, therefore going an octave below. You could potentially divide it by 4, going 2 octaves below. However, the problem there is it might be too low for the speakers, so try it if you want, but you need to have the headphones to make that work. The bass is played in unison with, well, technically it's not called unison, it's in homorhythmia with the kick or the snare. And if you are bugged by a student that wants to know everything, you go inside the game update 4 seconds or 4000 milliseconds, and you show them that this is the part that says if inside the groove our script, which is this one here, has selected a 0 or a 2, in other words a kick or a snare, then we're going to have the bass generated. If not, so if there is a 1 or a 3, then this bass is not going to be called, and that's why the bass is playing at unison in a homorhythmia with the kick and the snare. Final thing, the chords sequence instead is only called when we're playing a snare drum. Okay, so this is the other block, and let's do the final thing here. The harmonizer is playing chords. Remember to explain that chords are agreements between notes, which sometimes they might sound positive, negative, fearful, joyful. The harmony basically conveys all of the emotional content of the composition. And also important to say, one single note or one single chord have no meaning. They only have meaning in the context within others. So that's quite important. G is a dominant in C major, but it's a tonic in G, and it's a mediant in E. So very different jobs for the very same chord. So how does it work? Here we're playing quarter of a beat, or in other words a semiquaver, and we're getting the value root. So let's keep it simple. Well, let's say that a root is F at the minute, so we're going to get an F. Then we're going to go root plus 2, so F, G, A. So that's F, A, these two notes. And then we're going to go root plus 4, which is F, G, A, B. F, G. Oh, did I do something wrong? Just a second. No, that was correct. Sorry, I counted wrong. Is F is your 0. And then you count G, A, so it's your, no, sorry, just a second. Okay, cool. So F is your number 1, perfect. Then you do plus 2, that gives you 3, so it's F, G, A. And then you start again from F and you do plus 4, which means the 5th note, F, G, A, B, C. So F, A, C is being played. So to summarize it all, when you move, you play the notes of the chord 1 octave above. When you collect the drums, we regenerate a 4-bar loop. When you collect the bass, we play a bass note based on the root note selected, and only if we're playing a bass note, a kick drum or a snare drum, to synchronize drums and the bass. And finally, the chords are based on the root, and we add a 3rd and a 5th for a normal triad, and we finish by synchronizing those chords with the snare drum. Guys, this is it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. Please provide us with any feedback because it's very important. It's a new workshop. Enjoy, have fun teaching, have fun playing it. I'm quite happy. It sounds quite nice. Let's see how this is received. Thank you. Bye.